a very revealing discussion between Fox News' Bill O'Reilly and Colin Powell. The basic question has always come up with Colin Powell, and I think it's unfortunate that it always seems to come up with him. Why has he supported President Obama? And it cuts to a bigger issue in American political life, whereby the actions of people of color are often ascribed to their entire demographic group in a way that the actions of white people are not ascribed to their entire demographic group. We're going to play the clip for you from this Fox News interchange, and then we'll get into a little bit more of a discussion about how this represents something much bigger, something much more pernicious in American political life. Here's that clip from Fox News.
Here's what perplexes me. You're an analytical man. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, well, I try to be.
All right. President Obama's economic plan hasn't worked among African Americans. So you basically said to yourself, I'm still going to support the guy, even though his economic policies haven't worked for African Americans and pretty much anyone else.
Why are you only seeing me as an African American, Bill? That
because you didn't cite it. You did cite it, though.
This is, first of all, kudos to Colin Powell for just coming out and asking exactly the right question. That question that Colin Powell asked is considered a radical question. It's basically an unasked question. It's an assumption in American politics that the actions, the decisions, the behavior of people of color, the assumption is that that all must come out of a racial solidarity. That Colin Powell only supports certain aspects of President Obama's presidency and endorsed President Obama for re-election only because Colin Powell is black. The assumption, again, is that the actions, the motivations of people of color could only come from a sense of racial, ethnic, or demographic solidarity. We don't ascribe that, of course, to white people. You never hear Bill O'Reilly ask a white guy why he's supporting, let's say, Mitt Romney. Are you supporting Mitt Romney because you're white? You rarely ever hear that, because the assumption is that individual white people act individually, but individual people of color must only be acting in solidarity with their demographic group. This has come up time and time again in so many different areas in American life, but particularly when it comes to Colin Powell. And I say this as somebody who, look, I've been critical of Colin Powell when it comes to the Iraq War, when it comes to some of the military policies that he's pushed, but he has been the most clear example of how he can rarely ever do anything without being accused of acting only out of racial solidarity. And there's a couple other examples of this when it comes to Colin Powell that are illustrative. Back during the Romney-Obama race of 2012, John Sununu, the former New Hampshire governor who was heading Mitt Romney's campaign as a campaign advisor, went on television and said this about Colin Powell's decision to endorse President Obama for re-election. Quote, "I think when you have somebody of your own race that you're proud of being president of the United States, I applaud Colin Powell for standing with him." So kind of an underhanded, I applaud him, but hey, he's only supporting Obama because they're both black guys. Here's another quote. This was from 2008, Rush Limbaugh. He said, quote, "Secretary Powell says his endorsement is not about race. Okay, fine. I'm now researching his past endorsements to see if I can find all the inexperienced, very liberal white candidates he has endorsed. I'll let you know what I come up with." So Rush Limbaugh implying, again, that somebody of stature like Colin Powell could only be supporting an African American because they're both African American. Finally, Pat Buchanan, always a reliable source of bigotry and racism. He had this to say, quote, "Would Colin Powell be endorsing Obama if he were a white liberal Democrat?" Why is the assumption always that people of color are acting only out of racial, ethnic, or demographic solidarity when that's never the assumption, or really rarely the assumption, among white people? Can you imagine Bill O'Reilly asking a white person, "Are you supporting Mitt Romney because he's white?" Can you imagine that even being a topic of conversation if Colin Powell himself were white? This is one of the big factors in American politics that gets so little attention, but is so pernicious. What it effectively does is it dehumanizes people of color by saying they can never think independently, they can never act independently, that they are effectively not individuals. They are only part of a monolith. And Colin Powell, in going on national television and asking that simple question, why do you only see me as an African American, I think tore the veneer off that assumption. And he deserves kudos for that, because it makes, especially among Fox News viewers, it perhaps makes them ask the question maybe about whether they should be thinking about people of color as individuals rather than only as members of groups.